I am SUBHA from Mathuga Audio Library. I'm reading a short story named VANKA, written by Anton Chekhov. Anton Chekhov was a major Russian playwright and one of the masters of modern short story. VANKA. 9-year-old Vanka Ruko, who had been apprenticed 3 months ago to Aliakin the shoemaker, did not go to bed on Christmas Eve. He waited till his master and mistress and the senior apprentices had gone to church, and then took from the cupboard a bottle of ink and a pen with a rusty nib, spread out a crumpled sheet of paper, and was all ready to write. Before tracing the first letter, he glanced several times anxiously at the door and window, peered at the dark icon with shelves holding cobbler's slush stretching on either side of it, and gave a querying sigh. The paper lay on the bench, and Vanka knelt on the floor at the bench. "Dear Granddad Konstantin Makharich," he wrote, "I am writing a letter to you. I sent you Christmas greetings and hope God will send you his blessings. I have no father and no mummy, and you are all I have left." Vanka raised his eyes to the dark window pane in which the reflection of the candle flickered. In his imagination, he distinctly saw his granddad Konstantin Makharich. He was a night watchman on the estate of some gentlefolk called Revarev. He was small, lean, old man about 65, but remarkably lively and agile, with a smiling face and eyes bleary with drink. In the daytime, he either slept at the kitchen or sat joking with the cook and kitchen maids. In the night, he wrapped himself in a great sheepskin coat, walked round and round the estate, sounding his rattle. 2 dogs, Eel and Kashtanka, would follow him with drooping heads. Eel was named on account of his black coat and long weasel-like body. He was wonderfully respectful and insinuating. He had the same appealing glance on friends and strangers alike, but he inspired confidence in no one. His deferential manner and docility were pretexts for his cunningness and hostility. He was adept at stealing up to snap at a foot, creeping into the ice house, or snatching a peasant's chicken. His hind legs had been slashed again and again. Twice he had been strung up. He was beaten with an inch of his life every week, but he survived it all. Granddad was probably standing at the gate at this moment, screwing up his eyes to look at the bright red light coming from the church windows, or stumping about in his felt boots, fooling with the servants. His rattle would be fastened to his belt. He would be throwing out his arms and hugging himself against the cold, or with his old man's titter, pinching a maid or one of the cooks. "Have a nip," he would say, holding out his snuff box to the women. The women would take a pinch and sneeze. Grandfather would be overcome with delight, breaking out into jolly laughter and shouting, "Good for frozen noses." Even the dogs would be given snuff. Kashtanga would sneeze, shake her head and walk away, offended. But Eel, too polite to sneeze, would wag his tail, and the weather was glorious, the air still, transparent and fresh. It was a dark night, but the whole village with its white roofs, the smoke rising from the chimneys, the trees silver with rime, the snowdrifts could be seen distinctly. The sky was sprinkled with gaily twinkling stars, and the Milky Way stood out as clearly as if newly scrubbed for the holiday and polished with snow. Vanka sighed, dipped his pen in the ink and went on writing. And yesterday I had such a hiding. The master took me by the hair and dragged me out into the yard and beat me with the stirrup strap because by mistake I went to sleep while rocking their baby. And one day, last week, the mistress told me to gut a herring and I began from the tail, and she picked up the herring and rubbed my face with the head. The other apprentices make fun of me. They send me to the tavern for vodka and make me steal the master's cucumbers. And the master beats me with the first thing he finds. And there is nothing to eat. They give me bread in the morning and gruel for dinner, and in the evening bread again. But I never get tea or cabbage soup. They gobble it all up themselves, and they make me sleep in the passage, and when their baby cries, I don't get any sleep at all. I have to rock it. Dear Granddad, for the dear Lord's sake, take me away from here. Take me home to the village. I can't bear it any longer. Oh, Granddad, I beg and implore you, and I will always pray for you. Do take me away from here, or I will die. Vanka's lips twitched. He rubbed his eyes with a black fist and gave a sob. I will grind your snuff for you, he went on. I'll pray for you, and you can flog me as hard as you like if I'm naughty. And if you think there is nothing for me to do, I will ask the steward to take pity on me and let me clean the boots, or I'll go as a shepherd boy instead of fiddler. Dear Granddad, I can't stand it. It is killing me. I thought I would run away on foot to the village, but I have no boots and I'm afraid of the frost. And when I grow up to be a man, I will look after you and I will not let anyone hurt you. And when you die, I'll pray for your soul like I do for my mummy. Moscow is such a big town. There are so many gentlemen's houses and such a lot of horses and no sheep. And the dogs are not a bit fierce. The boys in the town don't roam the streets with stars, and they don't allow one to sing in church at Christmas. They were also seen selling fishing hooks that could even hold a sheatfish weighing 30 pounds. There are shops that have all sorts of guns, just like the ones the master has at home. They must cost 100 rubles each. In the butcher shops, they sell grouse, woodcock, and hares about which they don't say where they were shot. Dear Granddad, when they have a Christmas tree at the big house, take a gilded nut for me and put it away in the green chest. Ask Miss Olga Ignatievna. Tell her it's for Vanka. Vanka gave a sharp sigh and once more gazed at the window pane. He remembered his grandfather going to get a Christmas tree for the gentry and taking his grandson with him. Oh, what happy times those had been! Grandfather would give a chuckle, and the frost-bound wood chuckled, and Vanka, following their example, chuckled too. Before chopping down the fir tree, Grandfather would smoke a pipe, take a long pinch of snuff, and laugh at the shivering Vanka. The young fir trees coated with frost, stood motionless, waiting to see which one of them was to die. And suddenly a hare would come leaping over a snowdrift, swift as an arrow. Grandfather could never help shouting, "Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! Oh, you stub-tailed devil!" Grandfather would drag the tree to the big house and they would start decorating it. Miss Olga Ignatievna, Vanka's favorite, was the busiest of all. While Pelageya, Vanka's mother, was alive and in service at the big house, Olga Ignatievna used to give Vanka sweets and amuse herself by teaching him to read, write, and count to 100 and even to dance the quadrille. But when Pelageya died, the orphaned Vanka was sent down to the back kitchen to his grandfather and from there to Moscow to Alyakin the shoemaker. "Come to me, dear granddad," continued Vanka. "I beg you, for Christ's sake, take me away from here. Pity me, unhappy orphan. They beat me all the time and I'm always hungry and I'm so miserable here. I can't tell you, I cry all the time. And one day the master hit me over the head with a lust and I fell down and thought I would never get up again. I have such a miserable life, worse than a dog's. And I sent my love to Leona, one-eyed Yegor, and the coachman. And don't give me Konstantina to anyone. I remain your grandson Ivan Rukov. Dear granddad, do come." Vanka folded the sheet of paper in 4 and put it into an envelope which he had bought the day before for a kopeck. Then he paused to think, dipped his pen into the ink pot and wrote, "To grandfather in the village," scratched his head, thought again, then added, "To Konstantin Makarich." Pleased that no one had prevented him from writing, he put on his cap and ran out into the street without putting his coat on over his shirt. The men at the butcher's told him when he asked them the day before that letters are put into letter boxes and from these boxes sent all over the world on mail coaches with 3 horses and drunken drivers and jingling bells. Vanka ran as far as the nearest letter box and dropped his precious letter into the slit. An hour later, lulled by rosy hopes, he was fast asleep. He dreamed of a stove. On the stove ledge sat his grandfather, his bare feet dangling, reading the letter to the cooks. Eel was walking backwards and forwards in front of the stove, wagging his tail.